welcome. It's another Monday, another episode, another podcast. This week I'm going to be talking with my very good friend, Michael Allen. Do you want to say what's up?
Hello.
This guy, I've known him for about a year. He's super cool. He's really into the whole philosophy and spiritual kind of side of things, and he's very an interesting guy. So I really wanted to get him on here, and I'm very glad that we got to do this. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, so you want to talk a little bit about yourself, where are you from, that kind of thing?
Born and raised in Minnesota. Grew up in Bloomington. Mm-hmm. We all know about the same people. Went to the same schools.
Yeah.
Work around the same places. So
Right.
yeah.
I was curious. I want to talk about, first I want to get into, how did you get onto this kind of spiritual thing? What stemmed from getting in such a, you have a very high level of understanding of a lot of things. What made you get into that?
Well, my dad is a religious philosophy major. And so down in our basement, we just have hundreds of books on philosophy and different kinds of religion. And although that wasn't the path that he took, because he's a product manager for a chemical liner company,
Sure.
He still practices that stuff. And so a lot of that was,
You're just around that, in that environment kind of thing?
yeah. And my parents aren't like religious or anything. They kind of let us find our own path.
Right.
And so I think that's something that is really important. So for me, I had a longboarding accident when I was 16, and we were over in Highland Trails, and I was with two other people, and one of them was super inexperienced. And so we went over that bridge around that S, and I was carving really hard because you start picking up speed.
Yeah.
And I looked behind me, and I heard him fly off his board into the grass. And so I was on like an outward carve, and I turned over my shoulder to look at him. And when I did that, I just hit some sand or something and lost my balance and totally.
Was that like right where, there's a triangle of like the
right
three?
Before that, yeah.
Okay.
And so I hit head first. And so I rolled and then sat up, felt my head, saw the blood, and there was a guy with his daughter sitting. There was like a bench there.
Oh, yep, the picnic table.
And he comes running over, and he was a concussion specialist for the NFL.
What?
So it's just like how, and he's like looking at my eyes, and he's like, yes, you have a concussion. Like, you need to go to the hospital.
Wow.
And, like right before we left, just like moms do, she's like, wear your helmet, and it was in my trunk, and I went to grab it, and I set it back in my trunk. Oh. I closed the trunk, and then that's what happened, 15 minutes after she had said that.
Right.
And so I went to the hospital, and they told me that they couldn't believe that the swelling had stopped, because they thought it could have been much worse. And so I really felt like I had a second chance at that point.
Right.
And so
you're kind of granted this because you were not expected to go through, like they were surprised that you were still there, basically.
Yeah, and everything was just fine,
That's
and
insane.
I recovered from that and decided to take more of a meaningful path in my life and to do things right,
So there was no surgery or anything you had to get done?
No surgery, just the gravel they had to pick out from my side. I had just scrapes all from my knee all the way up down my back.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've read a fair amount of books and a fair amount of things about all these different theories and philosophies and whatnot. What is the one that stands out to you most, that you practice the most, that, you take very in your daily life and, your daily routine? What do you use the most?
I don't know if I can just pull something out of my brain, but...
No, that's fair. Okay, we'll give a couple, like what are the ones that you focus on the most or that you think relate to you the most or, that kind of thing?
I think for me, something that I practice in my life is... I always think about something that Carl Sagan said, the great science communicator, the great physicist. He said that the more that you know, the more you know what you don't know. And so I practice that as... the more information I learn, the more I see, the more doors that open in my life. And it's just like, you just realize how much you were in the dark. And
right.
So
it opens up a whole new thing of experiences and knowledge and power and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I guess the other one is that none of us chose to be here. We didn't choose this life. And so I think that the great thing about that is that you have the ability to choose certain things in your life.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And it may be constricted and constrained in certain ways, and everyone has obstacles and challenges to go through, but there's always something you can change. And you need to focus on those things instead of the things that you can't change.
Yeah. Well, so like everyone is here, you know, there's no changing that. It wasn't here by choice, but you think that like throughout our life we have choice? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's really good. I like that.
Because a lot of people feel stuck, and it's like
they think there's nothing they can do about it.
There's nothing they can do. But, you know, someone I listen to is Jordan Peterson.
Oh, yeah,
He's becoming very popular right now. He's a psychologist.
I've heard of him.
And he's right now going on tour with like Sam Harris and the Weinstein brothers.
Okay.
And they're going around trying to, like, talk to people and have these great long-standing conversations.
Yeah.
But Jordan, he wrote 12 Rules for Life, How to Order Chaos. And one of his rules is clean your room. And so a lot of people, like, they think that the government and society is just oppressing them, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Sure.
But there's one thing you can do, and you can clean your room. And your room is a microcosm of your life. And if it's messy and unorganized, most likely the rest of your life is messy and unorganized.
That's fair.
And if you just make your bed every day and you clean up your room and everything, you wake up to that organized, you know.
That's interesting.
It's not as chaotic.
I've also heard too, people who have a regular, people who work out regularly tend to have more energy and are more productive, because that, you know, when you're bringing your body to exhaustion or you're working your muscles constantly, you know, all these new muscles are forming, and they need to have more energy than your other ones that were already existing. But that's really cool.
Yeah. And when you work out, because that's something my sister, she was on jury duty recently, and she was just sitting around all day.
Sure.
And she's like, why am I so exhausted? And I think it's because when you're not stressing your body, you're not eliciting a dopamine, epinephrine response like serotonin. You're not leveling out your chemicals in your body. And when you do work out, that's what your body is. There's a stress response, and it's kind of balancing you out. And if you don't have that, it's like your body's just ready to go to bed all day, because it's just like, well, you're just hanging out. You're not doing any activity.
Right.
You know, yeah.
So do you run then? I know you're really into running, but do you work out a lot, or is that what you do instead of working out? You run?
Yeah, okay. Run, lift, hike. And the other day I hiked 15 miles with a 55-pound pack on.
Really?
Yeah.
Where at?
I started at Moyer. It took me 5.5 hours.
Jeez.
I walked like down through 9 Mile, and it's all flooded through there. So I had my snake boots on.
Wow.
I go up to my knee that are waterproof. And
yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So just trying to do things to keep me active.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Are you still doing I know last year when I talked to you, you said you were really into ice baths and you were into that. Are you still doing that?
I'm still doing it. Not as much as I was.
Okay.
I was supposed to go on a trip this January to Poland to climb Mount Schnitzka with someone called Wim Hof.
Okay.
But you know, money issues that just didn't pan out, but still practicing that. And I'm hoping that there's going to be something in like California or somewhere in the local, you know.
So what was it? Why were you doing this?
So I got into Wim Hof a couple years ago, and he's blown up since, but he holds a bunch of world records for like sitting in an ice bath for, you know, hours at a time.
Okay.
Or swimming underwater. He swam like however many meters it was, 60 meters, 100 meters. He swam underneath ice, and it was, you know, the water's freezing. And he was underneath the water for 7 minutes. His retinas ended up freezing, and he got lost under the water, and it was just a test run. So they were just hoping that he was going to come back out, but the divers had to go and get him, you know, and so
that's insane.
He ran a marathon in the desert with no water. He's climbed Everest in his shorts.
Just all these crazy records that he's made.
And so what he's able to do is he's able to maintain his core body temperature through breathing techniques and cold exposure. And over time, he's been able to do something that most people thought that we were unable to do. And now all these people are going to Europe to go meet him, or he's starting a bunch of stuff in the United States. And all these people are able to just walk in the snow in their shorts or sit in an ice bath for half an hour, where most people would get hypothermia very quickly. But Harvard's doing a bunch of studies. There's a bunch of different universities in Europe that are doing studies on him, and so yeah,
that's awesome.
It's pretty amazing.
When you talk about breathing, I know that was something we always used to talk about when we were meditating and stuff back when we worked at QBP together, and we always have these conversations. Are you still very into focusing on meditating regularly and focusing on your breathing?
Yeah. So to go back when I had my concussion, that's when I really started picking up meditation.
Okay.
So I've been meditating consistently since I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And so I'm 23 now, and that's been something that, when the world seems like it's too much and life is overbearing or whatever, and the weight of reality is just resting on your shoulders and you can't get your mind off something, meditation's been there for me where I can just relax and let go, and
it just relieves all of that anxiety or whatever that is. And how I was curious about this. So you get in that mindful or that state when you're meditating and you relieve all that stress. Then when you come out of it, how quickly does all that stress and all that weight come back?
I mean, yeah, it's going to come back, but it varies. It depends on how long I meditate. If it's just 10 minutes, that might give me a couple hours to just relax, or it might give me 30 minutes to just relax. I used to do that when we worked at Q. On my lunch break, I'd take 10 minutes to just sit there and breathe and
center yourself.
Some days where I can't meditate right now, it's just too much, or I would get right into it and I'd feel great for the rest of the day. If I didn't get enough sleep, just that 10 minutes of meditation and just calming yourself. I don't know the exact science behind it, but it definitely helps. And so
that's awesome.
If I'll do like the sensory deprivation tanks, if I do one of those, I was doing those once a month, I'd be good for most of the month.
Wow. Do you want to explain to the people who don't know, what is a sensory deprivation tank?
A sensory deprivation tank, it looks like, they have some high-tech ones now. Like, they have float rooms that you can go into.
That's nuts.
They have some super high-tech ones, but I do one that's a little bit older. It was one of the first versions. Kind of looks like a large refrigerator that you, like, climb into, or like a freezer.
Yeah.
And it's thousands of pounds of Epsom salt and like saline and stuff, that it's the water's really warm, so you get in there and it kind of feels like a tropical kind of environment. But the point is that when you get into the water and your skin become the same temperature as well as the air. And so eventually you start to lose feeling of your body and you become very cerebral. And so
it feels like you're floating.
It feels like you're floating, yeah. And most sessions are like an hour and a half.
Okay.
But I'd go in there, and since I've been meditating so long, I could do it for a really long time, because I could just lay on the floor to 4 to 6 hours, or lay outside and just do that for a long time. So getting in the tank, it was even better, because it removes all of your senses, and you just become.
Then when you're thinking, like when you're in that tank for that long, are you just thinking about nothing, because are you like, do you just see a white canvas and you're just existing, or what?
I mean, you go on a journey. I mean, your thoughts could be just racing, or you could be thinking about certain things that are going on in your life. And I'll partially use the tank as a way to think about things and work through things
and come to solutions of like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And it almost seems like your subconscious will, put things out there for you so that you can work on certain things.
Oh, sure.
But when I meditate, I'll go in there for 4 hours at a time sometimes. And so insane. I can do these long-standing meditations and have some very, to say the least, interesting experiences.
Yeah. Well, haven't you gotten really deep into your subconscious before and other things? Like,
yeah.
I know you've told me stories that have been like pretty surreal for you.
Yeah. And I would say that I'm fairly agnostic about higher powers, and because I know that I really don't know anything for sure,
right,
for certain. But I've had experiences that would lead me to believe that, there's just much more to this than
what we perceive.
Yes. And so one experience I had was when I meditate, I breathe into this inner space in my mind.
Okay.
And we want to look through our eyes, but really, if you can focus past that, it's almost as if like a room opens up in front of you.
Okay.
And I'll breathe into that space, and a lot of times I'll see certain lights or things that will go with my breath.
Oh, okay.
And as those lights get more and more,
like closer, further away.
Yeah, the experience starts to get
more intense.
Yeah, and the less I feel my body, the more in my mind I feel. So as I keep breathing into that space, the light gets more and more. And so one of the experiences I had where I totally lost feeling of my body, that breath was breathing with that light. I felt this fuzziness in my chest. I felt fuzziness up my forehead. It was almost like I had left my body at a certain point and kind of went into that light. So that was this weird experience. Like I'm completely sober.
Yeah.
And it was just like I wasn't sure what was happening. And
do you know how long was that one? Was that like one of those 4 hours? Like was it long?
Yeah, it was probably 4.5 hours, and you can't really tell whether it's 10 minutes or an hour, or if 30 seconds have passed or 5 minutes. Time becomes irrelevant. But what happened with that is that at that point, I felt as if I had lost my ego and myself, and all of my experiences and everything, as my body was like filling up, were just slipping away. And I had felt that who I was and what I thought I was really didn't mean anything. And I felt completely connected to everything else.
Okay.
And
interesting.
Once I got to this space, and I don't know where I was or what was happening, but I had felt as if something was like holding me like a baby and saying, everything's okay. Like it was like so comforting. And, like I said, I felt connected, like one with everything else. And,
so you basically lost yourself in that moment?
Yeah,
as well as
it was a very like
yourself?
transcendent, just like out of body experience. And the moment I was like, whoa, what's like where is me? Where am I? And I started feeling like I was losing myself. I just snapped right back because it was scary. It was like, it had never felt like that before.
Right. You felt like you were kind of separated from everything.
Yeah. And so I take that experience with a grain of salt, like it was.
Has that ever happened before? Or is that the only time it's happened?
After I had that experience, I've had it happen many times after that.
Oh, wow.
And so I've looked for knowledge and other people's experiences to try to compare, and everyone's going to have different experiences, but
oh, sure.
That seems to be a very common thing that people go through.
Like a separation from themselves and from reality kind of thing?
Yeah, and a feeling of oneness and connectivity with everything. Before when I started the spiritual journey, like before it was like I was totally science. It was like it's either this or that.
Well, weren't you going to school last year for science too, or what was
my degree is kinesiology.
Okay.
I'm going to go for physical therapy.
Okay, cool.
But that again, I take that experience with a grain of salt. Our brain's just a vat of chemicals that are giving us basically a hallucination.
Yeah.
And so anything, you can't just say, oh, I saw God or something like that. It's maybe, So.
It's all, that's insane. I can't even fathom what that would be like to experience.
Sure.
But I wanted to touch on, so you were talking about going through these sensory deprivation chambers. Didn't you do one at the U, and it was like a record-setting?
No, I did it at I went to a certain location, and no one had gone past an hour and a half.
Okay.
And I ended up doing 6 hours.
Jeez.
And so, so they gave me a deal. They were like, "This is ridiculous. Like, we'll cut you a deal. No one's done this. Not even the owner has gone that long before." But after I did that, someone had said, "Hey, they're doing this study at the U.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you get a hold of somebody?" And that didn't end up happening. But I checked in with their studies and stuff. And
yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how you go 6 hours just sitting in a pool of water. That is something that I can't even like.
Just like when you start running for the first time, running a mile is going to be tough, but after a month of running or a year of running, you're going to be able to run 5-10 miles or whatever you can do. So the same thing with meditation. I could sit on the floor for 10 minutes and it felt like the longest 10 minutes of my life, but doing it for almost 10 years, I'm able to just sit in that space for a really long time.
I suppose it becomes more natural. Sitting in that space for 10 minutes is like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I wanted to touch a little bit. You were talking about running, and that's a very big thing for you. I know you just set a very big goal for running 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Why did you want to challenge yourself to run 1,000 miles?
I think it's really important to set goals, and if you just want something and you want it to happen, I think it's better to make a plan. Mm-hmm. And I had been running 3 to 6 miles every day anyways, and so I thought, I just need a little bit more push to keep going, and let's just make a goal. And I was like, why not 1,000 miles before snowfall?
Mm-hmm. How close are you right now?
I have 950 miles to go. But I just had a hamstring injury, so I've been out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But it's about 30 to 50 miles a week.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Do you think setting these goals for you and setting these challenges, is there any times when you think that, these goals are too, like when you're thinking about running 1,000 miles, that sounds insane. What made you think that that's obtainable?
Well, it might not be, but I'm aiming for it.
You're curious if it's possible.
Right. And I was thinking about it earlier, some goals, like I want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a month. It's mm-hmm. not going to happen unless you're already close to looking like that.
Right.
A more obtainable goal might be like, I want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in 10 years, mm-hmm. like when he was in his prime.
Yeah.
And that's more of a realistic goal. And I think that's
mm-hmm.
something that you need to keep in mind is when you set certain goals is to keep it realistic mm-hmm. and truly know your abilities and what you can and can't do.
Sure.
And so I made that goal. I might not hit it. I might hit it, but it's the attempt that matters.
Well, so when you say realistic, me and Alex were talking about this morning. When someone says that, I don't like that word, because I think you could take anything as realistic. To say you could run 1,000 miles, but it might not be, before snowfall, but you could run 1,000 miles. You know what I mean? So yeah. There's no, I don't like when someone says, oh, well, make sure.
Practical.
Yeah. Like those kind of words. I think anything is possible. It just might not be possible, in a month, like you're saying, but you could do it in 10 years.
Right.
So it's not like it's not possible. It just might take longer.
Right. Or I'm 42 years old and I want to become a professional basketball player, but I've never played basketball before. Mm-hmm. Like that's just, it's not going to happen.
Mean, why not? Why do you say that it's not possible?
Maybe. I'll give you a 0.001% chance that he might get a 10-day contract and play for an NBA team. But if you've never played before in your life and mm-hmm. you're already in your 40s, mm-hmm. okay, let's say they're 71. They're not going to join the NBA. It's
sure.
just not going to happen. So in that sense, realistic, mm-hmm. You have to take that into account. I can't fly. Mm-hmm. I can't just go out in the yard and jump up to the air and start flying.
But you can get into a tin can and you can fly across the country.
It's true.
Which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you in that respect. So, there are things that you have to be grounded and that aren't, like pigs don't fly and all these kinds of things or whatever.
Yes, there's rules and constraints to this.
But I also think that we don't know our true limits because a lot of us, there's so much more that we don't know. Like you were saying earlier, there's so many things that we still have to discover, so many different breakthroughs and other things that I think that we haven't found yet that could potentially lead us to these other amazing things. But
yeah, almost an infinite amount of information that we could learn.
Yeah.
I think Neil deGrasse Tyson, not to sound crass or anything, but the other day he said someone was grilling him about a position that he had on something, and because he was saying that we know some kind of objective truth, and he was like, that's not what I meant. He was like, we have learned so much and we still don't know shit. So,
yeah. Right.
Just,
which is cool.
Be humble, for
mm-hmm.
what we do know.
But that was the other thing, for how much that we know and how much that we already know about who we are as individuals in our world and our environment and the universe and all these things. Think about how relative it is to the infinite universe that, like we are as an existing, and how small that we are, that we're just this dot on this like floating through a black nothingness, right. Essentially.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah. And we can only see, 88 billion light years across.
Mm-hmm.
We can only see so much, this vast, huge thing.
Are you into astrology and that kind of thing, or like looking at the universe as a whole, or I guess, what is that called or considered?
Cosmology.
Yeah, like looking at all those kind of.
Sure, I think astrology, looking at signs and like the Leo and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was just a tool that people used for a long time.
Okay.
And now it's become more of a
observation of.
Well, people attach it to all these different things, but
right, it's more of a broad word.
Yeah, and yeah. So, but as far as being interested in space and our reality in general. Yeah, it's.
Do you ever, when you go through these insane, like in-depth meditations and these crazy things, do you ever think about, reasons why we're here, those like life questions? Do you ever go through those thoughts and those processes?
Like meaning and purpose?
Yeah.
Of course, yes.
Do you think you've ever come up with, any sort of breakthroughs with your own life or certain things when you go through those?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I was curious.
As far as just sitting down for a couple hours and thinking to yourself, of course you're going to come to certain conclusions.
Do you think those have helped you a lot, or do you think sometimes it hinders you?
I think when life becomes overwhelming and you don't know how to handle it, because you're coming to certain conclusions you're having certain epiphanies about certain things, that can be difficult. But I think that's just a way to grow from that experience and learn how to deal with that. And
okay.
Yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Cool. So I don't know. You went through a lot. You just like hammered out so much stuff that went so quick. I'm just like trying to process everything that you talked about.
One thing is like I said, I'm not certain about anything, and from all the philosophy that I've read, I don't think there's much that we can be certain about. There's things like gravity that are pretty consistent.
Yeah.
We're still not exactly sure what that is and how it affects our universe as a whole. But as far as like sitting down and thinking in an existential and philosophical way, I'm not saying that there isn't meaning to this life, but it sure seems like there isn't meaning to this life or this experience in general. And what really matters is you being able to come to that conclusion and give yourself meaning. And I think from other podcasts that you guys have done, people come on here and say what makes them happy, you know? And I think that that's super important. You have to figure out like what is going to drive you to keep making positive changes in your life so that you can have more happiness. Because life is very up and down, and I think there's going to be tragedies throughout your life that you're going to have to deal with where you're not going to be happy, and there's going to be a lot of rough times. And so you need to find those things that keep you happy that you can go back to.
Okay. And that brings up a good point, because I know we used to talk a lot about, you were very adamant about how life is about suffering and you can't have happiness without suffering. And I know last year I was very adamant in saying that happiness is like this one track thing. And I've obviously grown quite a bit, and I've had, my perspectives have changed, but I was curious if you still have that same view, that life revolves around suffering, that kind of thing.
I mean, I agree with the Buddhists in a lot of ways. And there's not one view that I have that I'm just set on and say that life is suffering and that's all it is, and then we can only know happiness through our suffering. I think that there is a lot of suffering to life, and again, we did not choose to have this experience, and you are going to have to go through a lot of tragedy, and you are going to grow old and die, and everything's going to end at some point, and so you have to be able to adapt and overcome those moments, and you're not going to just be happy all the time, but you're going to have happy experiences and happy times, and that's what really matters.
Do you think that when you are in these states of suffering, what's the best way that you deal with to ground yourself and think about those happy, what do you do to stay motivated and stay happy through these negative situations?
So a couple of things. I meditate to try to just close that off and clear my mind. I try to keep the big picture in mind. I think that perspective is very important. And
totally.
I was talking to someone the other day about this, where it was most people tend to look through, I think about it like this, like you're looking through a telescope, and that's all you see right now. And that's what your life is. It's routine, it's stressful, you have all these things to do. You don't have time to think about why we're here and what this is.
Why are we sitting at this table with two mics at our faces talking?
And so I think that it's important to be able to, instead of looking through that telescope, lean back and look at your what's around you, you know, it metaphorically, you know,
Yeah.
And just take a step back. And a lot of times when you step away from the telescope and you're not looking at just that frame of reference,
that tunnel vision,
it can be overwhelming, and people want to go right back to that because whatever they were just at was safe and comfortable,
and it's what they know.
Right. And I think that's a lot is what we want in this, is to be comfortable and safe and have things easy. But and having some of that in your life is good, but I think that is about the worst thing you can do to be happy. And I think what it really is important is getting yourself out of your comfort zone, working really hard, because if you work really hard at something and you accomplish it, whatever it is, you're going to feel better about yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your opinions on fear then? Because I know it's very fearful to go out, step away from that telescope.
100%.
Okay.
I think that you just need to practice letting go of fear. And fear is a very important thing, you know, like, we've been cliff jumping before, and there's been a couple times where I was like, I don't think this is safe, and I'm just not going to do it. You know, if it's, if I truly feel that it's not okay, I'm not going to do it. But there's little things that you can overcome, you know, and you just can't, you're not going to go do something ridiculous or
like quitting my
irrational
job
or something. Yes. But you can start somewhere, and the more you can build confidence in yourself and believe in yourself, I think it's easier to tackle that fear.
Okay.
I think it's just a biological response for us to keep us in order and keep us in check and keep us safe and comfortable. And because, you know, maybe if you let go of that fear, you're having a risk, and that risk could get you killed, or, you know.
Well, let's look at action sports for a minute, just because that's what I know. But so with action sports and trying all these crazy stunts and crazy tricks, there's a lot of fear. At what point, you know, do you have to go to these levels, you know, where it's life or death situations to learn these new tricks and that kind of thing? You know, is it worth going to that extent to get killed over getting this feeling, you know, of doing that thing?
That's what you said. Is it worth it? And I think that you have to truly take that into account. And sometimes people will second guess themselves, and because they go, is it really worth it? I'm not really sure, but I think it's good to just try it. And you got to start somewhere. Again, like, you're not going to go hit a huge jump right away. You're gonna have to try little jumps first.
Yeah.
You know? And so if you build yourself up.
Well, I mean, you could hit the big jump first, but you're probably not gonna make it.
Yeah, and that might be your last jump.
Yeah.
So, you know,
that's fair.
Take it slow. Aim high for certain goals, but aim low in the day to day, because it's gonna take you a long time to get there.
And
it's a process.
I was curious about that too. So, like, running 1,000 miles, you're not, I mean, obviously you're thinking about 1,000 miles, but are you more focused about, okay, running 5 miles today?
It's what's happening today. And I think something that's helped me over the years is when I wake up, I say, how can I make my day the best it can be? And sometimes I'll just make a mental check of some things, or I'll write stuff down. I think writing things down and being able to check that off really helps you throughout your day. But, you know, you might hit that at 50%, but that's better than hitting it at 0%.
Yeah, totally.
And so if you can work on that and each day gets better and you're able to hit the goals that you have for each day, you know, that's what I mean by aiming low and getting better at that, because the more efficient that you can become, the better you're going to be off a year from now, 2 years from now. I think that's important for us, is to keep ourselves efficient and growing.
Moving. Yeah. No, I was curious about this. This is a good question. How do you find that goal? How do you find that target? You know, people come up to me and they're like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what goals to set for myself. How do I find them? What are your thoughts on that? How would you answer that question?
Well, I think most people, or all of us, have no idea what we're doing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And we're just taking the things that we like to do. And
people around us.
But I feel like those people that say, I don't know what to do, they do know what they want to do. It's just they have to really look deeper in themselves. And I think by asking questions like, well, what do you like to do? What are some of the things that you enjoy, you know? And you start to find these little things where they start opening up and talking about, like, I like to play guitar, or I like to go for walks or something. And it's like, well, keep doing that, you know? Or what makes you feel bad? And they're like, well, this and this. We'll try to avoid those things, you know?
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
I was curious. What if someone says, well, I don't like anything. I don't have any hobbies. I just go to school or I just work. I don't have any things I do on the side. How would you
try new things?
Okay, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
There's got to be something that you like. Art, going to concerts, eating really good food, cooking good food. Something. There's something for everyone.
Have you been doing new things daily? I know I used to talk a lot about trying new things once a day, learn something new once a day. Mm-hmm. Have you been doing that?
Every day I'm learning something new. I'm always trying to watch educators and read. And so, but yeah, it's important to keep doing that every day.
Yeah, that's fair. Is there anything that you are currently, I always like to ask this question because I think it's a really good one. Is there any personal development skills that you're working on right now, or any things that you're like focusing on that you really want to grow?
Sure. To finish your past question, trying new things.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. I took up Taekwondo. I took a class at Normandale. I was like, why not? I've been wanting to do martial arts my entire life, and
sure,
just why not? And so I picked up that class and I did it at Normandale, and I really enjoyed it. So now I continued on, and I'm a yellow belt, green stripe, working my way, and I'm working with I'm training with black belts every day, and so it's just. That is a long ways away, but it's each day that'll get you to that point. You have to be willing to go for that ride. And so then I started jiu-jitsu and kickboxing, and so now all of a sudden this passion for combat sports is coming into my life. So it's trying new things. I would have never known
that you were into that.
Yeah, until I started it. I thought I might be interested, and once I did it, I loved it. So.
I was going to ask you, what was the decision that like, hey, let's try this? Like, was it just curiosity?
Yeah. I mean, but again, from a young age, I wanted to do martial arts. It wasn't a part of my my family or anything. And I had played almost every other sport growing up, but martial arts my parents were always worried that someone's going to get head trauma or something like that. But you don't have to spar with people. You can just learn technique and form
defense and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So going back to personal development stuff, what is the skill that you're currently working on to better yourself?
Patience.
Okay.
That's something, I would say this is a great time to talk to you because the past I would say 3 or 4 months have been pretty rough for me. And so I think, patience has been something that's been hard because a lot of times we want things to happen now.
Yeah, instant gratification.
Yeah, especially today with social media and all these different things.
Of course.
And watching 30-second clips or 2-minute videos, we just want that information right now. But it's, I listen to 3-hour videos or 4-hour videos where people are having these long-standing conversations or podcasts or whatever. And so I think it's to be able to be patient and go for the ride and go for the journey. I mean, these podcasts are an amazing thing where you can sit down and explore.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Have you? I've noticed that quite a bit. I'm trying to learn like patience is. It depends on what it's for. Some things I'm really good at with patience, and I'm like really good with waiting and just being patient and whatnot. Like if it's things for my girlfriend or things for my family or whatever that I care about, I'm just like, okay, this is what it is. It's not the end of the world. I can just wait. But then other things, it's like I want it now. Like stuff for my new make happiness or other random things. It's like I want it now. I want it to go faster and whatever. It's really interesting that how some things come easier with patience and other things you want it more instantaneously. Do you think that's because of the amount of energy you want or the amount of passion you have for it or the connection to it?
I would say, it would make sense. The more passion that you have for something, the more you want it now. But yeah, I think it's more gratifying if you can really see that path and see how to get there and how much work it's going to take and once you get there, how rewarding it's going to be. Like,
you think it'd be better, setting this goal for 1,000 miles is going to be more gratifying than if you were to set a goal for 200 miles?
I think that if you accomplish anything, it's going to be rewarding. But yes, 200 miles, 1,000, it's a bigger number, it's going to be take more time. It's going to take more recovery and training in the process. Yeah, I would say that it'd be more gratifying. If I ran 10,000 miles, it would be, more gratifying.
Right.
So
that's fair. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I was curious is there anything that you want to touch on or talk about in this podcast or any things that you were curious about or wanted to ask me or that kind of thing?
Sure. But to keep going on, personal development.
Oh yeah.
I think one thing is a lot of people find themselves in bad situations, or they're really down in their lives and they don't know what to do about it.
Totally.
I was going somewhere.
Hey, aren't we all? Is it self-awareness?
Oh, so, well, I mean, that's a big part of it, self-awareness. But I think you need to be able to recognize, a lot of people say, like, you know, this is awful, but I think you need to be able to recognize that it can always be worse, or it can always be better. But
yeah,
I think that if you're at a point where you're down in a hole and it's tough to climb out of, I think you need to be able to say that this situation could be far, far worse. I think for people to be able to really take advantage of their lives, I think it needs to be able to it needs to be put into perspective, and you need to be able to create your own personal hell and your own personal heaven. Okay. And I think if you see the situation as that, wow, this could be way worse than it is right now. My situation isn't actually that bad.
Yeah.
But if I keep going down this track, if I keep doing the things that I don't think that you should do the things that you think you need to do for yourself and in your life. And if you keep doing the wrong things and you keep procrastinating and avoiding it and living in the comfort and just taking the easy route,
then you're never going to get there.
You're going to see how you could go down that path and what hell could really be like. And you say, I don't want to go there because that is the worst possible thing. And because of seeing that, you go, my situation isn't that bad. I can change this situation. Day by day, I'm going to make my like, how can this day be the best day possible?
Right.
You know?
How can I change this perspective?
Yeah. Or how can I make the week, a good week? There's going to be stuff that happens throughout the week, but you can just keep pushing,
Totally. I agree 100%. I think that's a really important thing, because I used to be like that a lot. I would sit and I'd be very stuck in my ways and this is what it is. I can't change anything. This is the worst thing in the world, until I kind of understood that, well, it's really not that bad compared to everything else.
Right.
You got to
just put it in perspective.
Which can be really hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. Especially if you are really down and you're really struggling, and you can't just tell someone, like,
it's not that bad.
Yeah,
It's
why don't you just be happy, man? Like,
people, they get really annoyed with me sometimes because I do that to them. But it can. I understand that it's really hard. Like if you have lost families or loved ones or whatever, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you're completely devastated.
Right, or you're sick. But I think it's always that if you take some kind of action, you can hope that it's going to get better.
Yeah, I think the worst thing that you could do is do nothing at all.
Yeah, nothing and hope. Not doing no action and hoping is about the worst thing that you can do. I think about, to quote Batman, I was watching it the other day, and there's this point in the movie where Rachel, one of the characters, says to Batman, she goes, "It's not about who you are underneath, it's what you do that defines us." And so it's not about your intentions that you have or who you think you are, who you want to be. It's what you do from that matters.
It's the actions.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Because that's a big part of it. It's, it's more or less just because you want this or you think this way, you're about these passions or whatever. Yes, that's all in your head, and those are your beliefs. But, if you act this way or you take, you make these decisions, they could be perceived completely different. If you say, oh, I'm religious, but you never go to church, or you swear a lot and do all these sins, it's like, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a lot of people who have a bunch of tattoos that are super religious. It's like, you're not supposed to harm your body in any way, So.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, so is there anything that you wanted to touch on or talk about in this podcast? Are you curious or wanted to ask me?
How do you find because we've touched on a lot of things, but
yeah, we have.
I think it's a big thing to, on this podcast, you guys have talked about what makes yourselves, what makes you happy. What's something that someone can do to make their day better, to
make themselves feel good,
to make happiness. How do you do that?
I think it depends. It depends from person to person, because everyone has their own definition of what makes them happy. Everyone has their own thing that gives them that sense of fulfillment or joy or whatever the feeling may be. So I think it's really important, we were talking about earlier, to go out and do those things and find those passions. And when you have that, that niche, whatever it is, make sure that you do those things. If it's, once a day or once a week or however many times you need to do it, like you do meditation or whatever, and that helps you, that stays you on track with whatever. So I think that's one of the most important things, is to make sure that you do those things that bring you that joy or that feeling. Mm-hmm. And that's what ultimately is going to bring you, the happiness throughout your entire life. So like my biggest thing for happiness is making other people feel good, helping others, and biking. And I do both of those things, every day. And so that's how I live such a happy, fulfilling life, is because I practice the most passionate things about my entire life. I practice every day.
I think also you need to keep a balance in your life.
Oh, totally.
Like I enjoy a couple beers every once in a while, or a little glass of whiskey. But if you're having a bottle of whiskey every night, or you're having a 12-pack every night, then it's become an excessive thing. And just because that's enjoyable for you,
right?
You need to be able to manage those certain things.
Totally.
Or if you're cliff jumping all the time and you keep up in that 80 foot, 90 feet, 120 feet, and at a certain point, like it's going to be excessive and something's going to happen, so you have
something remarkable could happen. You could set a record, or you could be on Red Bull for clear. Have you seen those videos of them? Like, you never know.
Sure.
But I totally agree with you. I think balance is very important. I think that you need to have other things in your life other than just strictly passions, because I do think, it's good to expand your horizons. Yes, like I work at Q, and it's not the greatest job in the world. It's a glorified warehouse. It's not great, but it's a good job.
Yeah.
So it's very it helps me stay sane, as far as there are a bunch of people who work there who aren't into bikes and who aren't very happy. So there's tons of people that I'm around all day who are very negative, and I guess not really negative, but more quote unquote realistic and whatever. So it helps me put it into perspective that not everyone is like me. Not everyone is like this insane, passionate person who always does what they love, kind of thing.
Or for like a lot of people, it doesn't matter what job it is, but we'll talk about Q. A lot of people will get too comfortable in their job and they don't want to leave, even if they hate it.
Oh yeah.
It's just because I'm getting a paycheck, I'm paying for my bills, and you could look for a new job, and in 2 weeks you could have a new job.
But it's the fear. They're afraid.
Yeah, they're afraid of change. I mean, and you just got to be able to
accept it,
recognize that, and just and move on. Because if you're doing a job that you absolutely hate and you're not getting paid well enough for it, then don't do that job.
Right.
And I guarantee there is something else out there that's going to make you a little bit more happy. And you don't have to wake up and go, God, I have to go do this horrible job,
But that's the other thing too. I know a lot of people will say that, like, even with this horrible job, there are good moments in this horrible thing.
There might be, yeah.
Like, I would have never met you if you didn't work at Q, and you left Q because you weren't happy, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, got too comfortable. It was like, it's time to try something new, try to do something different. Because again, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is the only way that you can grow.
Totally. Yeah. I agree.
Trying new things.
Which is why I'm trying new things and going on that aspect of growing out of your comfort zone is kind of a personal thing, or personal development skill that I've been working on. So I just recently, actually on Monday or Tuesday, I got a gym membership to LA Fitness.
Okay.
So I'm going to be working out 5 days a week, and I really want to get more in the routine of working out in the morning. And then I'm going to be starting school in August. So I'm going to be doing workouts every day in the morning, and then going to school from 8 a.m. to noon. And then I'll be at Q from 2 to 10. So it's like my whole day is going to be chaos and full of schedule and productivity. Because,
right. But at least you have a schedule.
Yeah.
Some people don't. The day is open, and they kind of they don't know what they're going to do for the day. I think that's something that's very important, is if you feel lost and you don't know where you're going to go, I feel like that's when people, or what you're doing, like I feel like that's when people are at their lowest.
They lose the direction.
Because you just got to pick a path. I think you could just sit around and wait and think about things, but if there's no action behind it,
you're not walking down a certain road if you're just sitting there.
Right. And so like for me, I had a point just a couple months ago where it was like, what am I really doing? What do I really want? How am I going to do it? And so it just felt like I was going down a path with no destination.
Yeah.
And so I think that even if you don't have a destination, you're like, I'm gonna take this path because it's gonna get me somewhere, you know,
which is better than where you are.
Yeah, it's better than I'm just going in a direction, I don't know where I'm going. But if you have some kind of goal, there's places that you can get to before you get to your final destination, you know.
Right. Do you know? So I was curious, what path did you take, or you know, what are you working at now? You know, where's your direction if you were at that point in your life a couple months ago?
So I mean,
where do you want to go?
Well, school's always been rough for me.
Oh yeah, totally. Same here.
I think that's the problem is if you don't know what you really want, it's going to be hard to be motivated to really do well at whatever you're doing. And so
definitely 100%.
I first started going to school for engineering, and I realized that I didn't want to sit in front of a computer working on programs and building little parts for some company or whatever. And so I decided that I wanted to help people. I had a horrible ankle injury.
Right.
And so
excuse the door opening, it's fine.
I had a horrible ankle injury, and so I went through 7 months of physical therapy.
Okay.
And so going through that and having them get me back to being able to run and do the certain things, I felt like I felt such gratitude for them helping me get there.
It brought you back to, you know, your destination and your direction and where you wanted to go.
And so talking about helping other people, that's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to school for kinesiology and physical therapy because I think that, you know, making other people want to be healthier and feel healthier and getting people to accomplish their goals in that way is very rewarding. So I think I finally found at least a path. And, you know, it might not be the right path or whatever, but it's something.
Well, it's the right path right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And things change, you know, you don't have to be, if you go to school for something and you do that for 10 years, you can always go back to school.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people, that's scary to just like leave their job and go back to school or something, but you could set yourself up for that. And
totally.
Yeah.
So this is really interesting that you say that you kind of redirected yourself and you want to go do this therapy thing because you want to help people. And I feel like in nearly every episode of this podcast, someone brings up helping someone or helping other people. That's a very reoccurring theme, which is really interesting. Do you think that's where we get our most fulfillments and our most sense of accomplishment in society or contribution to society is helping other people accomplish their goals or helping other people get their, you know, fulfillment, you know, or helping them?
I think that can be rewarding for sure.
Okay.
It might be. It just depends on the person. Honestly. Okay. I mean, but I think that it's really reward for yourself when you help other people.
Oh yeah, it's selfish.
I had heard you guys talk about it. It is a selfish thing in a lot of ways. I don't think that we're when I took one of my ethics course at Normandale, we talked about altruism, and I don't think that altruism necessarily exists. I don't think that you can totally 100% just do something for someone in that altruistic. I think that it's always because, like, if you see someone lying on the road in pain, you would help them because you would want someone to help you. You know, I think that in a lot of ways, but that doesn't matter that it could be a selfish thing. The point, the meaning behind it is that you are helping someone else, and it does make you feel good.
Totally.
And so, you know,
But I know, well, we touched on this a couple episodes ago. We talked about how I think that everything relates to selfishness. You know, no matter what you're doing it despite of yourself. Even if you're helping someone on the side of the road, you're doing it for your own good, like you were saying, because you want someone to do the same.
You're self-interested, yes.
But I also think that that's like where we get that self-contribution, because we're helping other people and it makes us feel good, and we get that gratitude. We get that. It is, you know, in retrospect, going back to thinking about what we're doing for ourselves, but you're also doing it for other people, which is a good thing. And we have that humble, I guess, I don't know what's the right word for it, but I'm trying to think, I don't know. But we get that a sense of accomplishment for helping other people, and, you know, you get that same feeling, whether it be even opening the door for someone, you know, or paying for someone's meal or whatever. But
or just complimenting someone. I mean, the other day, I've been doing that a lot more recently, is just complimenting someone. You know, I like your tattoo, I like your hair, something, you know, just it makes their day just a little bit better.
Have you been getting compliments to you more?
I guess I don't pay attention to it all that much, but
okay, that's fair.
Maybe it maybe if I focus on it, maybe. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I think how long we've been going on for over an hour probably on this. I was curious. Do you have anything last thoughts or?
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more we can talk about.
I suppose that's fair. We'll have to see. Maybe if the viewers like this episode, we could do a second one with you because I think we got into some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna bring I had a note sheet, but I just wanted our first one to be genuine and authentic and just on the spot, because I think that's what makes a lot of good podcasts is just on the spot and what can you come up with,
So. Which is awesome. Yeah. And I really like that idea because that's what I've kind of come to when we first started it is really structured and we tried to go through that kind of thing, but it didn't really work for us or work for me, I guess, because I'm more or less I like going off of, each other's conversation, just going with the flow kind of thing. I do have notes I'm looking at right now, but they're just like 4 questions right here, just random topics that we already touched on. And then we just go off on other tangents and then it just kind of snowballs.
Well, and it's hard to just pull that information out and say it the way that you want to say it, because you could say something 100 times 100 different ways and it might not be the way that you really wanted to.
And then you'll think of it, an hour later after we're done recording, you'll be like, oh shit, I should have said that.
Yeah.
But cool, man. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I really appreciate you all listening. Share it with your friends. Share it with the world. If you want to say goodbye or any last things?
No, just thanks for having me. I'd love to come back. That'd be
totally.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It means a lot. Yeah. I think it's really cool. It's always good hanging out with you and talking to you because you got that same energy level and just that, I don't know, the wavelength or vibe or whatever, but that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So take it easy. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Always remember to make some happiness.
Look up.